Hello everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp and to one of those episodes that makes me smile. It reminds me of when I was a kid playing some of the earlier titles in the series, and now here we are being sponsored by Ubisoft to cover Assassin's Creed Shadows on the Nintendo Switch 2, a device that my younger self probably wouldn't have even believed existed. But here we are. Now as always, leave your comments down below, let us know what you think of this one. If you'd like to support us and show Ubisoft this was a good place to sponsor a video, then just click the links in the description. I know you hear it all the time, you're so used to it you probably completely ignore it by default, but doing so literally ticks a box somewhere and says, yeah, great place to sponsor, let's do that again. So, Assassin's Creed Shadows on Nintendo Switch 2. What's it all about? Well, let's find out. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, Assassin's Creed as a series is always set in a different period of history, with a device known as the Animus allowing them to experience past memories. This time around, proceedings are set within 16th century Japan towards the end of the Sengoku period. Thus, there are many different factions vying for power and control, with the two main protagonists finding themselves in different parts of this conflict under very different circumstances. Yasuke is the powerful warrior with an almost brute force style of combat that's quite unusual for me within an Assassin's Creed game, but does play into the narrative. I believe he's based on a semi-historical figure.
You also have a more traditional assassin-type character in Kunoichi Naoe, where there's a bit of a revenge plot, family honor type thing going on. We won't say any more than that so as not to spoil it, but you have the two characters that work well together as you split your playtime between them.
The story itself is delivered over several time spans, often flicking back to the past, and with some optional quests showcasing some of their formative years. Cutscenes are voiced in both traditional Japanese or English with a dub, and that story also covers many different seasons. The Assassin's Creed games class themselves as action RPGs, with a stealth-heavy focus. That's probably why I said that the main protagonist, the male one, moves away from that style of play in quite a drastic way. He has large, heavier, slow attacks, does massive damage, but let's start with the combat. Yasuke essentially has the ability to plow through enemies. You can charge attacks up and slam yourself into lesser ones, sending them flying. There's also large amounts of dismemberment and decapitation, but some systems will be familiar. For example, you can lock onto characters by clicking the stick in, circle strafing around looking for opportunities, but enemies will attack in one of three different ways. If they attack and there's a white symbol, those can be parried. Doing so at the right time makes the enemy vulnerable for counterattacks. If it shows blue, then you have to block all of those blue attacks or parry them, at the end of which a stagger window is opened, and again you can do a little bit extra damage. And then finally you have the classic red style attacks. Those are the unblockables, where you'll be hopefully wanting to get out of the way by dodging. The systems definitely work well together. It's a refinement of the mechanics that Ubisoft have been working on for many years now, but personally I prefer the lighter, faster, agile character that had much less powerful but potentially more skillful moves. She can roll much quicker, she does far less damage to enemies, but really her main skill set is in her stealth, and much of that is tied to her movement. For example, she can fire off a grapple whenever you're near the edge of a building or certain surfaces, and then clamber up the side. Doing so allows her to reach high places very quickly, and it just looks cool. And from there, you can then set up your assassination moves. Now, in a shift from some of the older games, not all assassinations are made equally. For example, if you're looking at two very powerful characters and you're not very powerful yourself, then you won't actually be able to kill them with that assassination attempt. It will simply take some of their health off. As well as this, you can crawl around the environments, literally on your belly, and the use of foliage and undergrowth is much better than some of the past titles. If you remember, things like Black Flag, you used to approach grass and then the character would automatically crouch, but you could never do that yourself. It felt a little strange, but was obviously a mechanic that facilitated faster stealth gameplay and you kind of knew exactly where you were going. Here it's more freeform. Enemies have their fields of vision, it shows the amount that you can be seen or your visibility in the middle of the screen. And you have other tools at your disposal like kunai and smoke bombs, and a skill tree that grows quite rapidly, allowing you to progress into lots of different areas. The mapping system covers many large regions, and there are almost skill levels for going to them. Although you do have freedom, there's an indication of the difficulty you'll face when you get there. Once system that harkens back to things like Brotherhood is the ability to send out scouts. So if you're going to go to a place and there's something there that you know you need to find or see, you can actually go to the map and deploy one of your scouts. I really like that. They can also be recruited through what essentially are undocumented quests. So I saw a guy on the side of the road, he was chatting about how he was going to start cooking. I tried some of his food, it was absolutely terrible, but I told him, you stand a good chance as long as you practice. And he was delighted, so he joined me as one of my scouts. One area that you may not be aware of is the ability to customize your hideout. You can gather materials from the world, and it's one of those aspects, isn't it, that you end up gathering so much stuff in lots of games that you never use. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, you gather up those materials and you can use those to build different buildings, to change the layout, and I guess put your stamp on the world. And you as the player get to decide if you rather the stealth approach or the brute force, switching between them when you see fit. On the difficulty front, there's a lot of customization there as well. If you'd rather the more handhold approach, then you can actually opt for a mode that will show you far more information, or you can have it less overt, and I much preferred that way. As well as this, there are baked tutorials that cover the first couple of hours of the game so that you know most mechanics, and the world is filled with lots of different things to discover, explore, and of course, uncover. The mission structures themselves can be quite open-ended, sometimes offering you different ways to approach them, especially the stealth ones, and the designs of those is also made in such a way that there are multiple routes to approach them.
A quick word on controls then, and for the most part it controls exactly as you would expect if you've played this game on another console or an Assassin's Creed game before. You can use touchscreen within menus for navigation, etc. Aside from this though, you can't use gyro, for example, or the new mouse feature on the Switch 2 isn't implemented, but I would say these features would have been more of a extravagance than a necessity in a game like this. Let's move on to the visuals and performance now then. I think it's fair to say that Assassin's Creed Shadows is a game that pushes the Switch 2 to the max. It aims for a stable 30 frames per second in both docked and handheld mode, but to achieve this, developers have had to trade some graphical fidelity, as you may have expected.
Yeah, this one uses the Anvil engine, and as Glen rightly says, it does push the hardware to its limits. At times it can look absolutely beautiful. The 30 FPS is maintained most of the time, but this is a sponsored video, so for the full overview and analysis, keep your eye out for our performance review. But Ubisoft have stated that they're already working on patches and improvements.
So whilst the graphical fidelity has taken a bit of a hit, in order to try and achieve that stable frame rate, it's still a handsome looking game, isn't it? Just the nature of the setting itself, it's one of those more of the sum of its parts, in my opinion, with the different seasons and what have you. Even if some of the lighting effects, for example, have been either scaled down or removed.
Yeah, it's one of those experiences where you almost feel like you're stepping into a film at times. There are certain scenes and the way the lighting's handled, you'll see like dappled God rays coming through the trees. There'll be like a river. You can see they've clearly framed it on like Japanese artwork and stuff. It looks lovely.
Yeah, Mark mentioned Japanese cinema a moment ago, and it does have a feel of something like an Akira Kurosawa film about it, with the way it's framed and obviously the setting. As I mentioned a moment ago, it's one of those where the setting itself really sets up the game to look great, even if it has had to have a few hits taken to it in terms of the graphics.
Assassin's Creed Shadows retails at £49.99 on the Nintendo Switch eShop here in the UK, or your regional equivalents.
Yep, and this Switch 2 version includes almost all post-launch updates as of its release date, with the one caveat being the clause of Awaji, which is not included at launch, but is promised to come later, sometime in 2026.
So that's it for this one. As always, we will have our full review come out very shortly. Let us know down in the comments what you think of this. Is it a game that you're considering picking up? Or maybe you've played it before and you're wondering whether you should double dip. Thank you to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video.
Thank you to our patrons, of course, and our channel members for your continued support. And to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.